me to share my research with you here. Today I'm going to talk about the problem of shoreline hardening, and my topic is evaluating the dynamic effects of shoreline hardening on the coastal community resilience. My talk will be in 4 parts: the introduction, methods, results, and conclusions. Now let's move to the first part. Shoreline hardening or shoreline armoring often refers to the process of adding artificial structures along coasts. Researchers reported that 10% of Europe's coastline was hardened by 2006. 44% of the coastline in England has built hard defense infrastructures. In America, approximately 14% of the total coastline had been armored, and nearly 60% of China's coastline was hardened, reported in 2014. With increasing coastal development, such as industry and tourism activities, all for the purpose to protect the coastal area from sea level rise and storm surge. Substantial hard infrastructure is the status quo along coastlines worldwide. This proportion may be continually increased in some areas, if there are not enough concern on this issue. Comparing the hard shoreline and the soft shoreline, we can see that shoreline hardening can lead to a series of changes, interrupt natural shoreline processes, cause habitat loss and fragmentation, reduce the biological connectivity, and with the sediment transport affected, the water quality will be degraded. Soft shorelines can provide lots of benefits to protect coastal areas, enhance the habitat connectivity and ability of climate adaptation, also provide waterfront accessible space for humans. Actually, the hard infrastructure is necessary in some locations as coastal defenses, but the process of shoreline hardening could greatly affect the resilience of coastal communities to resist and recover from human activities and climate change. So how to identify the influence of shoreline hardening on the resilience of coastal community, and what measures should be taken to deal with the effect of shoreline hardening? That's what we want to discuss in this research. In the second part, I will show our methods of shoreline hardening patterns observation. Our study region is the Dapengneu district, which is officially established in 2011. Located in the southeast of Shenzhen, China, it is a peninsula surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, with large sea area of 305 square kilometers, and the coastline is 128 kilometers long. Because of its great ecological environment conditions and abundant natural resources, Dapengneu District was awarded the National Pilot of Ecological Civilization and the National Pilot of Marine Ecological Civilization. Its requirement of natural shoreline retention rate is 63.95%. In addition, it is a coastal tourism hotspot for its beautiful beaches, leading to continuous coastal construction and development activities. So it also faces the problem of shoreline hardening. In our methods, first, to identify the shoreline hardening patterns in Dapengneu District, we used 5-scale Google Earth image in 2010 and 2020. We classified coastal hardened parcels by manual visual interpretation. We divided the hardened parcels into two categories: coastal defense structures, including jetties, breakwaters, seawards, and riprap revetment. The hardening facilities contains residential, industry, recreation, and public facilities. These parcels are identified within a buffer zone of 300 meters on both sides of the coastline and calculated along 500 meters long transect units along coastline. Then we developed the Coastal Resilience Index as a measurement of the shoreline hardening effects, based on three indicators. First, the potential of coastal infrastructure. It is the weighted sum of the area proportion of various types of coastal hardening facilities, reflecting the sensitivity of coastal hardening facilities and their risks. While the natural shoreline protection and artificial defense structures protection efforts shows their adaptation capacity of coastal protection. Finally, the shoreline hardening-based coastal resilience index can be calculated by the weighted sum of these three factors after normalization. Now let's turn to the next part, the results. According to the shoreline hardening patterns observed, about 46.5 kilometers of Dapeng shoreline has been hardened in 2010, rising to 49 kilometers in 2010, and the coastal hardened area is increased. The increase of coastal hardening is due to continuous development and construction activities, many containing the tourism supporting facilities such as the coastal park and hotel, as well as the urban transformation and renewal. The figure here shows the distribution of hardening facilities in Dapeng. We can see that the coastal hardened facilities mainly distribute in the northwest, middle, and northeast shorelines, where are the concentration of population, residential construction, and tourism hotspots, and it is significantly expanded from the original in 2010. According to the estimate of resilience index, we got the coastal resilience figure as follows. It shows spatial heterogeneity across Dapeng's coastline, with high resilience along the southern coastline and low resilience along the northern coastline. About a quarter of the shoreline is in very low resilience state. Comparing figure A and B, we can see that the resilience in some coasts are declined, such as the Rose Coast and the Baisha Bay, which should be paid more attention on resilience enhancement action priority. One effective measure to enhance coastal resilience, which is a protected, stabilized coastal edge made of natural materials, such as plants, sand, or rocks. There are many alternative solutions, including a variety of green or soft habitats, achieve the goal of shoreline restoration. These nature-based approaches should be encouraged as priority restoration treatments on those low-resilience coasts. To conclude then, we have seen that shoreline hardening in Dapeng New District is still challenging, leading to about a quarter of the shoreline in very low resilience states. The coastal hardening facilities in Dapeng mainly distribute in the northeast, middle, and north, where the population, housing construction, and tourism hotspots were concentrated. The last, nature-based defenses often contribute to higher coastal resilience. Therefore, Coastal conservation and restoration actions should be taken to protect natural shoreline. Here are the references during my research. That's all my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Zhang. So, Andrea, do you have questions, or do you want to ask the audience?
Well, do you want to go through the second presentation first, and then
we go through all the questions all together at the end?
Sure.
Okay, so let's thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for Ms. Zhang's presentation. It's very interesting. I've been taking note, and I will have two questions to ask you at the end of the reporter session. Now let's go to the next reporter, Ms. Xiang Zhiyuan from the same university, Xiamen University in China. So she's presenting the equitable conditions, review risks, opportunities, transitions for resilient global coastal development. Thank you, Ms. Xiang. And the tech support center, please play the pre-recorded presentation, please. Thank you.
Everyone, my name is Xiang Zhiyuan. My topic today is about global coastal resilience, reviews risks, opportunities, and transitions to future extreme sea levels. These are our group members, and our group is named as COUREC, Coastal Urbanization and Regional Eco-Environmental Change. First, I want to introduce coastal socio-ecological systems. We know that coast is important. Coastal areas are home to more than 40% of the world's population, and 27% of them produces almost half of the world's GDP. And from the left bottom pictures, we can see that coastal areas are also home to various coastal wetlands, such as mangroves. However, coastal areas globally have undergone rapid and profound change as a result of accelerating climate change, coastal and catchment development, and overexploitation of resources. For example, it has been estimated that pursuit of economic development resulted in loss of about 35% of mangroves and 20% of coral reefs in the second half of the 20th century. And the sea level rise is estimated to result in another loss of 22% of the world's coastal wetlands by 2080. Well, we have provided a systemic overview of the tightly coupled human-nature interactions, the quantification of the human-people interaction and its resulting effects on coastal health and human well-being could be improved. Resilience thinking has been used in complex and linked human nature systems and refers to the capacity of a complex adaptive system to self-organize, learn, and adapt. In recent years, there have been researches on urban resilience, such as City Resilience Index, which aims to enable urban communities to survive and thrive multiple shocks and stresses. Initiatives such as the World Ports Climate Declaration and the World Ports Climate Initiative contribute to enhance port resilience through individual sectors. However, they lack an integrated approach that allows multiple perspectives and objectives to be considered. Many prior studies also focus on human development and habitat restoration by improving ecological resilience. Here we highlighted that we need to enhance coastal resilience for both ecosystem and social system to enable sustainable pathways. And for our resilience index framework, first, according to existing studies, we refer resilience as the capacity of social, economic, and environmental systems to cope with a hazardous event or trend or disturbance. responding or reorganizing in ways that maintain their essential function, identity, and structure, while also maintaining the capacity for adaptation, learning, and transformation. Components of the Coastal Resilience Index include coastal exposure and socio-ecological coping and adaptation capacity. For the coastal exposure, we include extreme sea level rise, which include mean sea level rise, wide waves, and storm surge, and also the population in low elevation coastal zones, that is, the number of individuals living on land less than 10 meters above sea level. And for the social ecological coping and adaptation capacity, we included coastal GDP and habitat role. For coastal GDP, we used GDP per capita as an index, and for habitat role, we evaluated in reducing exposure based on habitat presence, and we take the seagrasses, salt marshes, mangrove, and coral reefs into consideration. For our result, first we got the hotspots and cold spots map of coastal resilience, and we found that the hotspot regions of exposed people included Southeast Asia and the nations of Japan, the US East Coast, as well as Central and Western Europe, such as Belgium and the Netherlands. The crucial risk reduction benefits from coastal habitats, particularly coral reefs, mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrasses, expanded to temperate nations such as Australia and the US East Coast. And for the coastal resilience, we showed that the Southeast and Northeast Asia, such as Bangladesh, India, and China, are cold spots of resilience, and the most resilient coasts are in North America and Central and Western Europe, particularly the Gulf of Mexico and part of the US East Coast, Red Sea, which were characterized by relatively strong economy and less environmental stresses. And we also show the top 20 countries with the highest resilience value. And we found that the developed countries like Italy, as well as some small island developing states such as Malta, performed particularly well in all social ecological indicators. Combined with cluster analysis, hotspot results render a useful basis for explaining the resilience creating process. We found that 58% of the most resilient coasts were included in Group 6, that is characterized by a co-involving with coastal GDP and habitat, indicating a synergic opportunity in social-ecological development. And 96% of the total cold spots is composed of weak economies and a relatively lower proportion of habitat protection, such as the Group 5, which is not enough to help people cope with the high coastal exposure. And the cluster analysis also provided us examples of how multiple paths exist for achieving any given index score. For example, resilience scores were improved due to decreasing economies and increasing habitat role, such as the Group 4, as well as the economy development without habitat role, such as the Group 1. And if we look at the average scores across resilience levels, with the exception of the very high resilience class, we can find the disparities in economies and coastal exposure account for the differences in resilience across the other four classes, such as the low resilience class and within the medium resilience class. But the enabling conditions toward resilience from social, economic, and environmental dimensions need further explored. Based on the similarity of percentages, we found that the key differences between resilience categories are mainly due to human rights, national stability, group equity, and corruption. For environmental sustainability, clean water contributes most to differences between resilience categories than biodiversity and habitats. Across those 5 resilience levels, enabling conditions criteria that consistently ranked lowest were group equity and human rights. And from the correlation analysis between the social equity with coastal resilience and coastal risks, we found that compared with coastal risk index, the coastal resilience results were significantly and positively correlated with social equity. For the conclusions, we got 3 major points. First, the resilience coasts are mainly in North America, Australia, and Central and Western Europe, and we also identified the cold spots of the resilience, such as in the Northeast and Southeast Asia, which need more attention in the future. Second, there do exist a synergy opportunity in socio-ecological development. Third, disparities in economies and coastal exposure mainly account for the differences in resilience, especially key differences in the capacity of regions to achieve resilience are not due to available natural resources, but included factors such as human rights, national stability, group equity, and corruption. And for the future research, we think that further systematic research is needed to understand the dynamic people-nature interaction at coastal regions. Also, multi-hazard risk assessment of climate change is important to reflect complexity of coastal systems, especially the risk evaluation. Therefore, future research should include more climatic drivers, such as heat waves, extreme precipitation, and extreme droughts. Meanwhile, multi-vulnerability approach that considers the major socio-economic drivers can help to predict the ability of communities to respond during a natural disaster and recover after it has passed. As such, downscaling the vulnerability information to coastal resolution based on new processing technologies can support fine-scale assessment at coastal areas. Finally, many nations have substantial critical infrastructure, such as ports, airports, power plants. Many of these are in low-lying and highly exposed areas, and future studies need to better account for how their resilience are affected. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Zhang. It's a very global and interesting presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thanks to both of you. The floor is now open up to questions. I think Amy and I both have questions, but if there's anyone else here, or if you'd like to ask each other questions, we could start there.
Yeah, so we'll give the opportunity to the audience first to raise your questions, and then by the panel chairs. So are you colleagues for the 2 reporters?
Yeah, we are from the same research group.
Ah, okay. So I suppose certain question you can both answer. If not,
Maybe.
Okay, well, I'm happy to start, and either or both of you are welcome to answer this. I think there was a nice connection between the topics of the 2 papers, and I'm wondering, coming as a political scientist, where you see the sort of next steps going now that you have this data and this information. in terms of seeing the change happen, are you sharing this information with people who have the ability to make policy change? Are you anticipating that government responses or local community responses are needed? And how do you get from the importance you've shown in your research to having the awareness and change happen for better adaptation and change?
Either can start first to reply to the question of Andrea.
Maybe I can go first, and but I want to pay attention to the Xueting's study because it's about it's located in the Shenzhen city, and actually we have some collaborations with the local governments, and they have and for the Dapeng governments, they focus on and they pay much attention to the beach management. And maybe for example, they have published some strategies, and also and they have published some management strategies about the beach management, and also some zoning management program, zoning management plan. And I think, the sea level and the climate change, they is a future interest according to our discussion, and we will have more discussion about our result with the local governments about the climate change, and how the beach can adapt to the sea level rise in the next step. Maybe Xueting can give some supplement.
Ms. Zhang?
Yes. Dapeng is a new district formally formed in 2011, and it is an ecological district in Shenzhen, and they are paying more attention to the ecological construction. So I think the governors they are also view this program, and we will show our research to them, and they are to some extent they are support our they give us very much support, and they are also there are some ways to apply our research on their decision makings. So I think it is meaningful work.
And
Thank
Dapeng also have thank you. And Dapeng also have a research group and a research center, and some professors from our university have already joined them, and I think it's important mechanism for the collaboration between the science and the management.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you both. And Amy, did you want to go ahead with your questions?
Yes. So I think the question Andrea asked is very well. I would like to ask the same question as Andrea, actually, because you're from the political science. I'm from urban planning, urban economics. So after listening to your reply regarding to this general policy-oriented question, I would like to ask some specific question regarding to the policy change or your solution, your actions. After all your data analysis and context evaluation, etc. So the first question will be to Ms. Zhang. You showed us an equation about the index, the SHCRI index. And I understand that you have the R1, R2, R3, right? Pointing out the risk protection, their contribution to the index. So, so my question will be towards this the creation of this equation. How do you define the coefficient, the 0.3 to R1, 0.4 to R2, and 0.3 to R3. I think the sum of these three coefficient is 100%. So, but how do you define them? Is it through expert review, through a panel, or through some literature investigation, or through some survey? So this is the first question for Ms. Xiang. Another question will be for, this first question is for Ms. Zhang, for the first presentation, and the second one I will ask for Ms. Xiang. Okay.
Okay, I can give some answers to the first question, and from the coefficient of this index, and actually we didn't make some surveys or expert views of this coefficient, but it is set by our experience perspective, and we also set some scenarios about this coefficient, and there are not significant differences about this coefficient. So we choose one to show this index.
Did you do any simulation by varying the coefficient, and do you think the result, so the result is not significantly different when you choose the different proportion of this coefficient?
Not yet.
Okay, so it's just a question to raise, but because your data is already quite comprehensive, and yeah. So this is the first question. Thank you. And the second question will be for Ms. Xiang. So the conclusion you gave us is that you show a synergy between economic indicated by GDP and also the social aspect indicated by the habitat, and you say that by improving this kind of synergy, we can enhance the level of resilience for local government, for the ecological construction, ecological planning. So since you two, both of you have already communicated with a local government for this case study, and there is a research group indicated. So mentioned before with different universities, etc. Did you have any brainstorming session to show that, okay, this based on your conclusion for this synergy, how will be the next step? Like Andrea asked, to frame or to elaborate some specific strategy or solution or tangible, construction project or planning to implement this synergy, because we know the risk is there, the conflict is there, but you show the synergy is very positive, and it gives hope to the Greater Bay Area, including Dapen Bay, to say, because flooding here is very severe in China. I heard about that, so the synergy will give the local government a hope. So did you have any feedback from the local government or other experts from the DAPN research group?
Thank you. It's an important question because in our view, sometimes we develop the economies by with the cost of the ecosystem as a cost of ecosystem and as resulting in the habitat degradations. But here we find that some small developing states such as Malta, they can go the synergies and we have not discussed all results with the local governments, but we have make some discussions with our colleagues. Sometimes some small states, for example, they have maybe they have more strong economies in the tourisms for their rich natural resources. Just like this kind of states, they can got these synergies, but we haven't done thorough studies for the all the coastal countries to verify or confirm that if these synergies just exist in this small, just exist in the small development states. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Xiang. Okay.
Thank you for the question because it's very important. Yeah, we have done much analysis, but we major in the environmental management, so it's important to communicate more with the local governments to make the analysis to become more maybe more practical and yeah.
Yeah, because your data analysis is already very intensive, right? You have 20,000 study points. You collected the very vast.
It's a global analysis, and we use a point layers to do it.
So how much time, I mean, or years did you, or month did you use to collect and analyze and process all those data?
I do this research last year.
So 1 year, during 1 year, you can finalize the data from data collection to data processing at 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay, and the data is from which kind of database, may I ask?
It's all open. It's all from the open data now. For the GDP is from the World Bank, and for the habitat data, we all have all the vegetative habitat data from the existing articles. And for the sea level rise, extreme sea level rise, they all have published papers about it. But now it's still difficult to make resilience quantification. So we also spent much time to verify this resilience framework, why it can reflect the resilience. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed to me that part, that there's two really important parts. There's the practical steps that might come from this with some of the correlations that you established, but there's so many bigger pieces that correlate around aspects of social equality and gender and things like that, where there's not a clear sense that immediate steps can be taken by a local government, you know, to address those. Those are more generational, long-term things that are important to know about, but it's harder to say we need to next year do A, B, and C.
I think it's difficult for the local government to confirm for example, the causal linkage between the equity and the resilience. But for the global analysis, there are many prior studies have already focused on the equity and the resilience, because equity equity represents from a vulnerability and resilience perspective. Equity represents the uneven and unjust distribution of the exposure and also the distribution of the vulnerability. For example, some studies have already indicated the disparities of the socio-economic conditions among the different resilience levels. But it's more about a regional or global scale.
So if you allow, I will ask a third question.
Welcome.
Yeah. So since there is a very strong connection between both of your presentation regarding to the case study in Dapeng, Shenzhen, and a global study, including lots of states in the world, and have you been comparing to some global standard of resiliency index? Because before I've been seeing from I think resiliency 1000 or something like that, or C40s, they have existing resiliency index with different aspects for sure. Because for Ms. Zhang, your index is really regarding to a very specific hardening issue of the shoreline. It's actually a very serious issue. And Ms. Zhang's focus will be a very general social economic evaluation. Did you ever, or for both of you, compare to the other global evaluation framework or index system, etc., from the other international association, including, I don't know, World Bank or IMF or OECD or even United Nations, etc.? Do you have any advice or studies already on this?
In my research, I have done the correlation analysis between our resilience index with the existing coastal risk index. And the coastal risk index actually is from the existing water risk index. And we found, and for the country rank list, we found some similarities. And in general, the developed countries perform better, but some also, some small developing states can also perform well from the coastal resilience or the coastal risk perspective.
In my research, because the Dapeng district is a local small-scale case study, and the resilience index is for the disturbance of human activity, the shoreline hardening. So actually, there are little research about this. So I didn't compare the index with other researches. Okay, thank you.
And in the next step, we'll also want to make some comparisons with the Ocean Health Index and other index such as the Human Development Index. Thanks.
Thank you. Sometimes a question is only a question. Yes, I still remember when I published paper and review by some expert from the renowned reviewer. They ask a question and I try to answer, and then after the review, I ask them the same question to say, if you are me, how do you answer this question? And they say, oh, this question is always only a question to inspire you or to raise some discussion among, researchers or authors. So it's a way to inspire each other. So thank you for your answer. I think the Ocean Health Index will be a very interesting comparison indicator. Because Andrew, do you know that the Greater Bay Area in China, they are now a focus for economic development? And
yeah, I didn't know that, but I gathered that from the first presentation with the rapid kind of rise of industry and things around the coastline. And I was thinking too that was an interesting sort of problem with the correlation that was set up in the other paper that was showing that there's more degradation of the coastline when there's low economic development. But yet it seems that when there's strong economic development, you get that hardening along the shoreline, which limits the adaptation potential.
Yes, so it's a trade-off. We need to develop economy. We need to grow our revenue for living, for social, for social happiness in some extent. But in the other way, we are conflicting with the natural environment, etc. So I think transforming the hardening, the hot shoreline to a green, soft shoreline will be very important, because the soft green shoreline can provide recreational beaches, entertaining area for the Greater Bay Area people. So,
is this a region which sees a lot of tourism from people in China coming to this coast, or?
Yes, in Dapeng there are 56 beaches in there, so it is tourism sites for people, and the human activity are to extend a little some bad impacts on this natural environment. So we also learn a lot from our exchange.
Actually, almost all the beaches of the Shenzhen cities are located in Dapeng. Maybe 57 beaches in Shenzhen in total.
68. Oh, it's wrong. It's 58.
So the local governments devoted themselves to develop the local tourisms, but at the same time they want to protect they still need to protect the ecosystems. So I think the existing findings that the synergies we found from other countries, maybe they can provide some perspectives for the Shenzhen, for the Dapeng's development, maybe for the tourism development or other sectors.
So may I ask a question? Since you mentioned that the majority of the beaches in Shenzhen located in Dapeng, so the beach management is, it belongs to which part of the city agency? It belongs to the Ocean Management or Ecological Protection Agency, or Urban Planning or Tourism Board? Have you ever talked to any of these agencies to say, okay, which kind of responsibility or they share their responsibility, or it will point it out to a specific beach management agency, or it belongs to the ocean? I don't know. It's a question.
Oh, yes. The beach management now in Dapeng is for the Department of Natural Resources, but for the tourism, it is responsible to the tourism department. There are two different agencies, but they are responsible for different works for the beach management. The Natural Resources Department are focused on the beach safety or the beach clean work like this. But the tourism department mainly focus on the tourism development.
Okay. Have they any coordination linkage to say, okay, you develop the tourist economy, but you should build your hotels or your recreational facilities in certain protective zone in order not to harm the ecological protection zone? Do they have the ecological zoning?
Oh yes, they have a regulation about the beach management, and the beaches are divided into 4 parts of management classes. Some are developed as the recreational beach, and some are protected and cannot be accessed. So the government, they are play some actions to the protective of the beaches.
Thank you very much. I'm very satisfied for the answer. I try to mind the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both for a really interesting presentation. It's so nice when you have a panel and the papers speak to each other, and we can have a conversation like this. Your
Thank you.
research is very interesting.
Thank you, and welcome to Xiamen. Welcome to Dapeng. Xiamen is a very beautiful coastal city.
Yeah, it sounds very lovely. Be nice when I can go anywhere.
Oh, that's you.
leave my home office.
So we hope the crisis will come to an end, and for the next conference we can meet in IRL in real life. Around the beaches, one of the beaches in Dapeng, perhaps. Because Shenzhen is a mega city, and Andrea, if you ever heard of Shenzhen, actually is the 3rd very important financial center in China. And as originally Chinese, we are very happy to have this big city, but with lots of beaches. Because for the capital in Beijing, for Shanghai, for Guangzhou, for example, they don't have this kind of a system of beaches. Means for people to have fun. Means that a mega city, you can live, you can work, and at the same time you can have a holiday all together. It's a fantastic city to experience.
Yeah, it sounds lovely. Good place to go to university.
Yes, there are several universities in Shenzhen, also Shenzhen University, and lots of foreign universities. They create a branch in Shenzhen. Yeah, to build more connection between China and the other countries, and so it's a very open city. I'm Cantonese, so I'm from Canton. Shenzhen is in Canton.
Okay, so my husband's family originally are Cantonese, but
Wow.
you know, his parents, his mother was born in Jamaica, his father was born in California, and it was their grandparents that had originally left, but both from the same sort of smaller part in southern China.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Do we have and your director both there? You do your research is directed by the same director or no?
Yeah, the same
Okay.
director.
Our tutor is Professor Liang Fan.
Hello. Good evening, Professor Li.
Hello.
I would like to say thank you, Professor Li. Your students are fantastic because we ask lots of questions. They try to answer it, and we can see they made a lot of efforts, not only for the research themselves by analyzing data, understanding data, thinking about strategies, etc. But they communicate with local government, communicate with other researchers, and wow, I think it's a very comprehensive research effort from internal research and external communication with other global scholars. So congratulations.
Thank you, Amy and Andrew. And I heard the presentation of the two students, and heard some discussion with you. However, I moved to another session to discuss with the invited speaker by me. So I just move here again and find your very good discussion and a very good environment to discuss the science and policy interface in China's coast urbanization and China's coast resilience practice. I think it's very good. I will discuss with my students after the session and conclude your comments and conclude your questions, and we work together to improve our work on coastal resilience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we can take a group photo.
Of course.
Ziyuan, would you like to take the photo?
Okay. Okay, I have taken it.
Oh, there's a very good ending. We have a group photo
Yeah.
in the cloud.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So Andrew, do you want to close the panel? And
Yeah, it's 9 o'clock, so we should close the panel.